Welcome to Leave the Feed 30 Days of Disconnect. Today is day 7, Origin Story. And what a story we have, the story of Zaida Hernandez. Zaida, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the welcome.
You're an amazing human and you've accomplished so much. Let's hear a little bit about your story to becoming the Space Latina and how that unfolded and where you are today in your life and your career and your journey as a creator.
Yes, thank you. So, the Space Latina, that's something that happened a couple of years back, actually. So, I started this journey, I would say probably during COVID is when it really got started. I started sharing just what my background is. For those of you that don't know me, my background is in engineering. So, I work in the aerospace industry. I've been with NASA for a couple of years. And I talk about STEM and being a woman in STEM and just being a minority in STEM. And I used to do a lot of outreach, and I would go out and talk to the kids and volunteer for science fairs and do a lot of things. But then when COVID came around, that was all gone. So I lost that connection to the students, to the educators, and it I had already a social media page, but it just came as an idea of let me start sharing some of the things about STEM or some of the work that I'm doing or some of the things that I find interesting about science and engineering and space on the social media. And then it took off, and that's how the Space Latina got started. I changed like my handle to that, and I started sharing more, and I got really connected to people. And then through that, I also had an idea. I have a lot of ideas. I'm an idea person, but I always wanted to be an author, and I didn't feel like I had made that a priority. I didn't have a lot of time because I'm trying to balance a lot of things. But again, during the COVID times, I had more time on my hands because I wasn't going out as much. So I did putting my ideas onto paper and I started working on my children's books. So I also have children's books that are in the fields of STEM and space for kids. So all of that is part of what makes the Space Latina.
Now, let's talk about the origin story of the Space
Okay.
Latina and where you grew up and your interest in space. How did all of this unfold?
My family is originally from El Salvador, and I'm from Houston, Texas, but we would always go on trips back to my parents' homeland in El Salvador. And that, I would say that's probably where my love for space started. Coming from Houston, I love Houston, and it's also called Space City because we have a lot of space things. We have Johnson Space Center Houston. So I had that. You can't really appreciate the night sky and space in Houston because as it's a big city, there's a lot of light pollution, a lot of city life. So going to El Salvador, my parents are from more rural areas. So there's not a lot of light pollution. It's like very countryside. And when I was young, I have vivid memories of going to my great grandma's house and then just looking up at the sky, and it was so different than the sky I was used to in the US. I could see so many stars, even the moon seemed brighter. And it's just something that I fell in love with. I loved going to El Salvador and just looking up at the sky. I asked for a notebook so I can draw the little star maps. And it's something that I loved, but I didn't really know what to do with that. It was just like, oh, I love space and that's it. And then growing up, I was interested in like science and engineering, but again, I had the love of space, but I didn't know what to do with that. But in high school, I had a teacher who she told me, "Oh, there's this really cool internship I think you would be interested in." And I talked to her a little bit about it. What is it and what's going on? She said it's an internship for high school students at NASA. And I think you're a good fit for it. I think you should apply. That seemed like something that was out of my reach, if I'm being honest. I had a lot of respect and trust for my high school teachers, so I felt special because she thought that I should apply. So I did it mostly to please her, I think. Okay, if you think I'm good at it, I'll go ahead and apply. But I had an idea of what a scientist or a NASA engineer looked like, and it wasn't like me. So to me, it was like the Bill Nye the Science Guy look, or like the Apollo movies. But anyways, I went ahead and I applied, and to my surprise, I got it. That kind of reignited my love for space and the idea of maybe I do belong in this space, that is the space sector. But yeah, just from my background too, I will say I do come from a space loving family. Like my parents, they like space. They didn't force it down me, I would say, but they do like it. I have a little boy. He's going to be 2 years old soon. And I feel like I'm the same way. Like I'm not trying to force him to be like a space nerd and love space, but maybe it's in our blood because he loves it. Like he's obsessed with rockets. He loves the planets. Yeah, so I think maybe it is. It's part of us. Like I think human nature is also to wonder what's out there, what's in the universe. I feel like people, if you go outside at night, you naturally want to look up at the sky, or I do. I want to look at the moon. I want to look at the stars. I think that's something that we all share as humans.
Yeah, it's really nice. I've been blessed in my life to hike through the Colorado Rockies and to see
Sounds awesome.
so many magnificent stars, like a shooting star that comes at you every couple of seconds. And
Yeah.
you really start to feel that connection. When I read about you growing up in El Salvador, I just thought, man, like a lot of people don't have that experience to look up and be curious. Sometimes I feel like we're so bound to Earth and the gravitational pull. And when we think of space, we think of science fiction. It almost feels out of reach or not part of this world. And how do you interpret our connection with space, with the vastness of this universe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's like the saying of we're all made up of stardust. And then you start to think about like things in space and all of the humans. And for me, I find that as something so special because we can be so different or so far apart on Earth, but we look up at the night sky, it doesn't matter where we are, and we all see the moon, or we all see like this star, or in some cases, sometimes we can see a planet. So just like thinking about things like that when I can't go to sleep at night, those are the things that come to my mind. What is out there and what's our purpose on Earth? And yeah, I think it's something that there's just so much to the universe and there's so much more to explore and it can feel like we're so disconnected from it, but in reality, I feel like it's something that connects us more, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. We're all part of this experience together, even though we're having these independent forms of consciousness that,
Yeah.
are walking this earth, but we're all like, to your point, like we're all made of stardust. We all have these metals in our body and we're all part of this creation. And it's so magnificent to marvel at the unknown. And I think that's
Yeah.
what's so mysterious about it is we can study the soil on earth, we can study plants, and we can generally have some knowledge about how, but the why is the big thing. And to look up and to marvel at the why is an experience I think we all need more of. And talk about how your books are helping children, especially Latina girls, ask themselves more questions about why and become more interested in space because I also have an idea of what a NASA scientist looks like. And now it's you, which makes me
Oh,
happy. But before, it was the cookie cutter, like white guy going to space with the short haircut. And
yeah.
what's your hope and what you want younger generations to understand about their place and role in exploring space and exploring the unknown?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of messages. I think the first one is space is for all. Space is for everybody. It's not limited to just the people working on space projects or even the astronauts. Space benefits everybody. There's a lot of space technology that happens with NASA and the other space agencies around the world that benefit humans back on Earth. It can be in the areas of medicine, it can be with something as simple as memory foam that you use for your bed that you sleep comfortably in, or for your glasses if you need to wear glasses. So just that in itself, I think space is important for a lot of reasons, not just if you think you like space or are interested in space. It's just, it's beneficial. There's a lot of things that people don't realize that they get studied through space research that yeah, they are benefiting people all around the world. And I think it's also important to not have an idea of what the right person looks like. And I think that was my mistake when I was younger, of thinking I don't belong because I don't look this way or I'm not this age. I think that with the books, what my message is that there's a lot of different things that you can do if you're interested in STEM and space, but also all of the different people working to make these things happen. There was a really amazing illustrator that worked on one of the books. All of the books, I've had the chance to work with a great team. But I'm talking specifically about one of my books. It's called Luz Lucero, and this is a Salvadorian illustrator artist. And I really love her work because she tried her best to represent all of the different kinds of people as part of the storyline. So the book is about a little girl who is selected to go to space, and then she goes through all of the astronaut training at the Space Center before she goes to space. And we talk about the different types of roles that exist that some people might just think astronaut and then engineer and that's it. But there's people that are training them. There's divers because they do astronaut training in a really big pool to simulate microgravity. There's people who do software. Of course, there's the engineers and the scientists, but there's really a big team of people, language experts, because they learn to speak with people that also go to space from other parts of the world. And then the characters, they're from all age groups. So there's a guy like with the man bun. There's like the older generation represented. There's like young people. There's people of different races. So I love that. And that's something that I was working with her on because I wanted representation. So, of course, I'm a Latina in space. So I want Latina girls to see themselves represented. The protagonist, she's a Latina girl. But it's not just about Latina girls, it's about representation for all. So you do have men, you have women, you have all different races. So I do love that, and that's something that I want to make sure that kids growing up, they can see themselves with something that can seem as simple as a children's book, but it can be very inspirational for them for their future. I think it's important in books, I think it's important in TV shows, for us talking about it through podcasts. I think it's a really good tool that we have now, and social media, the representation, so that they know all of the different spaces that are available to them.
Yeah, that representation is so essential, not just in this industry, but all industries, that everyone can see an opportunity for themselves growing up. And you mentioned social media. Now, social media is a wonderful asset for creators like yourself. You get to share these messages, inspire young girls, the books that you've published, to have that voice. But it also comes with challenges. And I know you mentioned adopting social media during the pandemic. And how has your relationship with social media unfolded? Where has it really helped you, and where has it caused some mental health challenges?
So I have had, for the most part, a good relationship with social media. I would say that during the pandemic, I did feel a little bit isolated, and I feel that most people can relate to that. I found that social media was a way to feel reconnected again to just humans. I was living in a small apartment at the time. It did feel like very isolated, even though there's other people in the apartment complex, but I wasn't seeing them. I didn't even know who my neighbors were. But I do find that social media is a good tool for that. In my case, it connected me to students, to educators, to space lovers just around the world. I had the opportunity to talk to schools in Mexico, in Brazil, in Canada. And then a couple of years later, I even had the opportunity to go visit some of those students that I talked to. So I did travel to Brazil to support an engineering and science event, and I was able to then see them face to face. So that's another thing that's really interesting because sometimes we see people virtually and it's almost like unreachable in a way. Are they a real person? And then you see them in person, and then there's that connection because you've already talked to them or you've already shared a lot of things about each other. So that's been I would say, the plus side, just being able to connect with people. I would say some of the negatives are some of the obvious of just a lot of times. We'll see highlight reels on social media. So you see all of the good, and then unfortunately, life is life, so there's ups and downs, right? So people have good times and bad times, but then you're seeing on your social media feed everyone having the best time of their lives and having great experiences, and you might be in a time of your life where that's not the case. So that's when things can get a little bit toxic if you start comparing your life to theirs, or if you feel like the need to, okay, maybe I'm gonna just represent something that is false about your life just so you can feel like you're fitting in. So that's something that I've tried not to do. There have been like times in my life where I've had to step back because I'm not in the best place. So I'd rather just take a step back and like disconnect and then come back again. But then now I'm re-inspired or able to share something that's more cheerful. At the same time, though, I think it is important to be authentic and transparent in my social media. I have also shared things that aren't always like the highlight reel, like some of the things that might be hard in life. So in my case, I had some issues going through engineering school where I didn't feel like I was good enough for engineering, or I had people who tell me, you don't belong here, or you need to go somewhere else because this isn't working out for you. So I think it's important to share that too, because it is part of your journey, it is part of your story, and then someone else might be able to relate to that too. So I have done that through social media. So that's like I think I would categorize that as the good, some of the good of social media. Again, some of the bad could be you could spiral and then go into just let me share all the negative things in life. And that's also not something that you want to be putting out in the world. So it's a balance. I think, like most things, it's a balance.
When you do realize that you need that time to disconnect
hmm
for whatever reason, what do you like to do? Where does Zeta find her peace during disconnection?
Yeah. So I really like the arts, and I think that's why I always wanted to be an author. But most of my work is in the science and engineering space, so it's very math and science and technical. But when I just want to disconnect and relax, I go back to the arts. So whether it's like drawing or for me, like thinking of story ideas, I find that fun and relaxing. I really like music. I have my son. He has a lot of energy, so I also find it very relaxing to do activities with him, although physically it's not relaxing because he loves to run around, but it just is relieving for my brain. It's just doing fun running around activities. I do showing him some of the things that I like, which, as I've shared, is space. So looking up, looking at the moon, looking at the stars. He has been to El Salvador now. He was younger then, so just a year and some months old. But as he grows, I do want him to appreciate that because, like I said, I'm fascinated by the night sky. I think it gives us perspective of life. And if you feel like you have a lot of problems in life, or if you think things are not going your way, and then you look up and then you think about the stars in the sky and these and planets and other worlds, it really gives you that perspective of, okay, maybe my problems are not that big.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially because today's whole lesson in disconnect is all about the origin story of not just the existence of the universe, but the why behind why we're here. And that perspective and to look up is so important. And sometimes I feel like when you ask someone to ponder creation, to look up at the sky, it might feel overwhelming. Like, where do I start with this? How do I bring an innate curiosity that is human? We have the ability to perceive through the senses, and that's pretty limited. And the universe is gigantic and massive, and sometimes it's hard for us to reconcile. What are some like very simple ways that people that are listening can be more curious about space and be more curious about our existence without feeling like overwhelmed
Yeah,
by that whole experience?
that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it as overwhelming. And I think it's again because I find it so interesting and fascinating, but It is true. Sometimes I do start to think about things and then I spiral thinking about numbers and things that are unknown. But I think there's a couple of different ways to start if someone is interested. I think you could also treat it as a form of meditation. So you not necessarily starting to think about the math of what's out there, just more of looking at the beauty of it. So like thinking back to when I was a kid, I would just I would just go outside in El Salvador where my family's from and then look up. And really, that's as simple as that. And it was a form of relaxation. So, like after a round of playing with my cousins, I would just relax and just look up and appreciate the beauty of what's up there. So that's one way to start. And you don't have to go to El Salvador to do it. You don't have to go hiking somewhere if you're not a hiker. As simple as going to your backyard and just sitting in a lawn chair or putting out a blanket and looking up. If you're wanting to learn a little bit more about the history, I really recommend like observatories. So I went to the Griffith Observatory in California. I found that to be really great. There's also a lot of science and space centers. There's the Space Center Houston. They have a lot of like interesting artifacts of things that have gone to space, and you can have the little short excerpts that they have and read a little bit more about it. So I think those are great ways to just get out there and learn more. And I do also feel like this challenge is about learning. So it's about like disconnecting, right? And then also just learning more. So to me, those are some ways of one can be, yeah, like the relaxation, or the other one can be just learning more about space and where we come from and just what else there is to explore because there's also that piece of this is all like things that have taken place. These are the stars that exist and the planets, but there's also the part of we're humans and we like to explore. And there's a lot of missions right now that are being planned of we're going to go back to the moon. And even though we've gone before, we only explored like a little section of the moon, but there's the whole polar regions that we don't know about, or we do, but we haven't explored and we want to go and really see what it's like. Again, it's like when you've met someone on social media and then you meet them in person, it's like another level. Or Mars. We've sent rovers and robotic things to Mars, but now we're planning human missions to Mars. So what's that? And can we colonize Mars or can we colonize other planets? So there's a lot of really interesting things in the space. And I know I love space, but I think that's something that a lot of people are curious about. Even if you think you don't like space, I think there's something that you like about space.
Definitely, I think we can't run away from that astral connection, and I think we all
Yeah.
have that innate curiosity and feeling that it's bigger than us, but part of us. Now, in terms of the Leave the Feed challenge, you've talked about your hope is that people take some time to learn more, whether it's learning about space, learning about themselves. For those that are listening that are going through these 30 days or just looking to have healthier social media habits, what's your advice for them? What's your encouragement or hope as they're on this journey of making peace with their relationship of themselves in the digital world and the physical world?
I think social media and technology and even I don't think those are going anywhere. So I think it's important to not disconnect completely from them because by disconnecting by them, you're also disconnecting yourself from a lot of people and experiences and things. But I think, like relationships, it's also important to set boundaries so it can't control your life. Like it can be a part of your life, like there's a certain aspect of it, and you also have to be mindful of how it makes you feel. So I said earlier that I took a little break from social media because I was going through a lot of life changes and I didn't feel inspired, and then I think I was looking at things the wrong way. So it didn't make me feel good to see some things. So be mindful of how it's making you feel. If you're spending time on things that give you energy, that make you feel good, then that's great. But if you start to feel that social media is impacting your life negatively, then maybe it's time to reassess some of the things that you're looking at. And maybe it's time to take a step back and disconnect. And I think it sounds like there's going to be some really great speakers on the podcast that are going to have a lot of really interesting topics to share. So I hope that you can connect with at least one, if not more of them, and really take on the challenge of learning and just even learning more about yourself, as you've said, but just learning more about the world and the universe and different things that you may not have thought about. So I think there's a lot of value to that. I'm really happy that you put together this series, and I think there's a lot. So also don't be overwhelmed by it. So you don't have to do it all, but it is a challenge and it's 30 days, and I think it takes 21 days to form a habit. I hope it becomes a habit and then you just want to continue to learn and to disconnect and to really focus on new experiences and things.
Well, thank you so much. Very inspiring, very insightful, and very true. I really appreciate you. You've been phenomenal. And thanks for all the work that you've done breaking down barriers inside of STEM, engineering, space exploration. You're a true testament of success and what one can accomplish simply by gazing up at the stars. So thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I hope this connects with at least one person.
And for those listening, thank you so much for joining in. Don't be afraid to disconnect and have an epic day. Thanks again, Zeta.